The stars had always fascinated humanity, but the galaxies beyond were a new kind of mystery. Humanity had grown fast. In less than 1,000 years, they had gone from building fragile rockets to sleek starships that could cross light years in days. Their fleets were strong, fast, and smart. And yet, somewhere deep in the heart of the human capital lay a collection that many thought was useless: the museum ships. They were relics. Old warships from the early centuries of space exploration, polished and repaired for display, not battle. Their hulls bore scars of battles long forgotten. Some had designs that seemed clumsy compared to modern ships, with thick metal plating and engines that hummed instead of gliding silently like today's anti-gravity drives. But they had something the modern ships did not: history. Ilara Voss walked along the polished decks of USS Pioneer, one of the museum ships. Her boots made soft echoes. She had grown up listening to stories about these old ships, but this was the first time she had set foot on one. Her brown hair fell in front of her eyes as she peered at the control panels, which were full of switches, dials, and small screens. It looked like a machine from another world compared to the sleek glass panels of her modern starship. "Look at these," she whispered to herself. So old but clever. Ilara was young for her rank, a junior engineer but sharp and curious. While others saw antiques, she saw potential. She traced her fingers over the control buttons, noting the ship's energy shield generator, a massive sphere in the middle of the deck. Unlike modern shields that were software-driven and computerized, this one relied on analog mechanics and old energy pulses. It was slow, yes, but reliable. Simple. Resistant. "Voss," a voice called. It was Captain Harding, a tall man with graying hair and a firm face. "Don't spend too much time daydreaming. These are museum pieces. Remember that. They're not meant to fly in combat." "I know, sir," Ilara said, though her eyes remained glued to the machinery. "But these systems are strange. I think they could do something our modern ships cannot." Harding shook his head and walked away. "Strange is exactly why they're in a museum. Let's keep them there." The humans were not alone in the galaxy anymore. The Vorans, a distant alien species, had observed human progress from afar. To them, humanity was primitive, slow, and foolish. Their scouts often laughed at humanity's fleet when it passed near their borders. They saw humans clinging to the past, building ships that looked like toys, while their own fleet shimmered with lights and weapons far beyond human imagination. Now, the human government had arranged a galactic exhibition. It was meant to show humanity's technological progress, its modern fleet, and even its relics, the museum ships. Dignitaries from countless alien species would come. The exhibition was a festival of pride, but to many humans, it was also a reminder of vulnerability. The aliens might laugh, but the humans had learned long ago that laughter could hide danger. The exhibition hall was a sight to behold. Ships of all sizes floated in the massive docking area. Modern starships shone like stars themselves, smooth and elegant, their hulls reflecting the bright lights above. And then there were the museum ships: Pioneer, Pathfinder, Sentinel, and others. They sat proudly, old but dignified, their history written in their worn metal. Visitors walked past them, mostly ignoring the relics, captivated instead by the flashy modern designs. "Why are these even here?" a young alien diplomat asked, pointing at Pioneer. Its long arms trembled slightly with curiosity. "They look useless." Ilara overheard the comment and smiled quietly. She had heard similar words before. The Vorans and others did not understand humans. They thought elegance meant strength. They thought speed and weapons meant intelligence. But humans had a different kind of strength, a stubborn, creative, unpredictable strength. "Old, yes," she murmured to herself, "but they are clever, just wait." The day passed with speeches, demonstrations, and polite conversations. Humans boasted of their modern ships and technology, earning polite nods and faint smiles from the alien visitors. Then came the turn of the museum ships. The dignitaries gathered, curious but skeptical. Alara led a small team to demonstrate the pioneers' capabilities. They didn't show flashy weapons. They didn't try to impress with speed. Instead, they showed how the ship could maneuver through dangerous asteroid fields, resist energy pulses, and maintain long-term energy output without refueling. The aliens watched with thinly veiled amusement. "That's old tech," one whispered. "How can it compete with modern fleets?" Alara smiled. "You'll see," she whispered back. By evening the exhibition ended. Lights dimmed. Humans celebrated quietly, proud but cautious. The museum ships returned to their display positions. Alara lingered, walking along Pioneer's deck. She studied the engines, the energy shields, the old navigation computers. Something about them intrigued her. These ships had survived centuries, battles, and neglect. There was something humans had built then that even modern ships couldn't match. And then the warning came. "Distress signal," the communications officer called. "From the outer rim, alien ships entering human space." The room went silent. Eyes turned to the large holographic map. Red dots moved toward the human colonies, Voran ships, hundreds of them advancing fast. "Impossible," a senior officer muttered. "They're not supposed to be this close." Alara's heart raced. She ran to the control console. "Sir, the modern ships, they might not be ready, but the museum ships, they're different. The Vorans won't expect them, and their systems, they might resist alien jamming." Harding frowned. "Voss, these are relics. You're suggesting what? Deploy them?" "Yes," Alara said, her voice firm. "We have no choice. If the modern fleet fails, these ships might be the only ones that can surprise the enemy." The room was tense. Some laughed nervously, others shook their heads. "Deploy museum ships. Are you serious?" Alara did not answer. She only stared at Pioneer's hull, polished but scarred. She could almost hear the ship whispering back, "We were built for more than display. Trust us." Night fell, and the stars outside the exhibition hall burned bright. The alien ships moved closer, unaware that their mocking eyes would soon meet a human cunning they had not anticipated. Alara went to sleep that night dreaming of engines, shields, and tactics. She thought about the old pilots who had flown these museum ships decades ago. They were gone now, but their legacy remained, encoded into the ship's very design. And in the morning, when the humans would face the Vorans, those relics would no longer be mocked. They would fly, and the galaxy would learn that human ingenuity was not defined by age, but by the mind that guided it. The first sparks of what would become a legendary story were forming. Museum ships, ridiculed for centuries, were about to show the universe that humans were never to be underestimated. And Alara Voss, with her sharp eyes and stubborn heart, would be at the center of it all. The human capital was still buzzing from the exhibition, unaware of the growing danger beyond the outer rim. The Voran ships, sleek and fast, moved with quiet precision through the emptiness of space. They were confident, mocking humanity from afar, certain that no primitive human fleet could challenge them. Alara Voss stood in the command center of USS Pioneer, one of the museum ships, staring at the holographic display showing approaching enemy ships. Hundreds of red dots moved steadily toward the human colonies, their paths unbroken, their intent clear. Attack. "Status report," Captain Harding demanded, his face grim. "Modern fleet is mobilizing," the communications officer replied. "But the Voran speed and electronic warfare systems are advanced. Our weapons may not reach them before they hit the colonies." Harding ran a hand through his hair. "How fast can the museum ships get operational?" Alara stepped forward. "We can deploy in less than an hour. The ships are functional. They need a few minor calibrations, but they're ready." "Are you suggesting we send relics to fight an advanced fleet?" Harding asked, incredulous. "Do you have any idea what these aliens can do?" Alara held his gaze. "Exactly. They won't expect these ships." And because their systems are designed to counter modern technology, the museum ship's old mechanics might actually bypass their defenses. There was silence. Some officers whispered to each other, unsure if she was mad or brilliant. "Prepare the museum ships," Harding finally ordered, his voice tight. "We deploy them alongside the modern fleet. If nothing else, they can serve as a distraction." Alara felt a surge of determination. She ran through the ship, checking engines, shields, and navigation systems. The Pioneer's analog energy shields hummed to life, casting a soft blue glow across the control room. The old engines, slow to start, roared as if waking from a deep sleep. "This is it," she muttered. "Let us show them what humans can do." Meanwhile, the Vorons approached at frightening speed. Their ships glinted in the distant starlight, long, silver, and precise. They were designed for war, with weapons that could destroy colonies in minutes, but their confidence was their weakness. They saw humans as outdated, slow, predictable. They did not know that humans had creativity on their side. The first encounter happened near Colony Theta, a mining outpost on a small, rocky planet. The modern human fleet engaged first, firing lasers and energy pulses. For a brief moment, it looked like humans could hold them off, but the Vorons quickly adapted. Their shields deflected the energy weapons, and their ships moved in formations that countered modern tactics effortlessly. "Sir, our weapons are barely making a dent," one officer reported, panic creeping into his voice. Harding turned to Alara. "It's your turn." Alara nodded. "Pioneer, Pathfinder, Sentinel, engage." The museum ships moved out of the docking area, their engines roaring in a way that made the modern fleet look quiet and timid. To the Vorons, it looked almost comical, old, rusty ships leaving port like children playing war games. "Look at them," a Voron commander said, his voice echoing in the alien fleet. "Pathetic." Alara's fingers flew over the controls. She activated the graviton maneuvering system, a relic technology that allowed her ship to manipulate gravity fields around it. The Pioneer shifted in space with an impossible grace, weaving between asteroids and small moons. The Voron AI tried to track her, but the analog movements of the old ship were unpredictable. "Impossible," the Voron commander shouted. "Their movements are chaotic." "Why can't we lock on?" Alara smiled. "Simple. They built these ships for human pilots, not for predictable machines." The museum ships began to engage strategically. They didn't fire energy weapons immediately. Instead, they jammed communications, created false positions, and forced the Vorons into confusion. Where modern ships would try to overpower the enemy with brute force, the museum ships used intelligence. They forced the Vorons to chase shadows, avoid collisions, and overcommit to attacks. Colonists on Theta watched from the surface as the ancient ships darted through space like agile dancers. For the first time, they saw not relics, but human ingenuity at work. Alara called to the fleet. "Deploy the pulse shields, redirect energy to the graviton engines. Let them think we're weak, then strike where they can't anticipate." The plan worked. The Voron ships collided with gravitational distortions created by the museum fleet, forcing several to retreat to avoid damage. None of the museum ships fired a lethal shot. They didn't need to. By manipulating gravity fields and electronic signals, they neutralized the enemy without destruction, a tactic no modern fleet could replicate easily. Meanwhile, back on the human command station, Harding watched in awe. "Voss, I underestimated them. They're brilliant." Alara's eyes never left the holographic display. "We're just getting started, sir." The Vorons, meanwhile, were growing frustrated. Their commanders could not understand why these old ships were impossible to counter. Every maneuver the humans made seemed illogical, yet effective. The aliens had prepared for modern weapons, AI predictions, and high-speed maneuvers, but they had not accounted for human unpredictability. In the midst of the battle, one Voron squadron aimed directly at the Pioneer. thinking it the weakest target. Alara's heart raced. She activated the emergency graviton pulse, sending a temporary gravity well behind her ship. The Voran ships, caught in the unexpected field, spun out of formation. One collided with a small moon harmlessly, but enough to send a warning to the others. "Signal the fleet," she shouted. "They think they're in control. They're not." The museum ships worked together like a well-practiced orchestra. Pathfinder created diversions, Sentinel blocked escape routes, and Pioneer led precise gravitational traps. The Vorans were disoriented and exhausted within hours. "Sir," a communications officer said breathlessly, "they're retreating for now." Harding exhaled deeply. "All units pull back to formation. Well done, Voss. You saved the colonies today." Alara's face was serious. "It's only the beginning. They will regroup. And when they do, we'll need to be ready. The museum ships, they're more than relics. They're a symbol." Back on Colony Theta, people cheered as the alien ships withdrew. They didn't understand all the technical details, but they understood one thing: humanity had survived against superior forces. Alara looked up at the stars, thinking about the irony. The Vorans had mocked humanity, laughed at the museum ships, and thought themselves invincible. And yet the humans had turned what seemed weak into their greatest strength. The museum ships floated silently in the dark space near the colonies, their engines quiet now, their graviton fields off, but their presence commanding respect. Veterans who had once served on them decades ago had told stories of ingenuity and courage. Those stories had inspired a new generation. Today, they had proved them right. "Do you think they'll come back?" Captain Harding asked, breaking her thoughts. "They will," Alara said, her voice steady, "and we will be ready. These ships, they may look old, but they are human, and humans adapt, humans survive, humans win." For the first time, she allowed herself a small smile. The museum ships were no longer just exhibits. They were active participants in a story that the galaxy would never forget. As the sun of Colony Theta rose over the barren horizon, Alara knew that the days ahead would be challenging. The Vorans would not give up easily. They would return with more ships, more weapons, and more confidence. But the humans now had a new weapon, one the aliens could not predict: the ingenuity and creativity of humanity, encoded in ships that had once been forgotten. And Alara Voss, standing tall on the deck of Pioneer, was ready to lead them into the next battle. The galaxy had begun to take notice. News of humans using their ancient relics to hold back the Vorans spread through the stars like wildfire. Many aliens were still skeptical, but some were quietly impressed. Humanity had survived an encounter that should have been impossible, not with sheer firepower, but with ingenuity and creativity. Alara Voss stood on the deck of USS Pioneer, her eyes scanning the holographic map. The Vorans were regrouping, and reports showed their flagship, a massive silver leviathan called the Vorkesh, was moving in with full force. If it reached the colonies, it could obliterate settlements in hours. The modern human fleet alone could not stop it, and relying on technology alone had already proven risky. "Prepare the fleet," Alara ordered. Her voice was calm, but her heart raced. "We'll show them that human history is stronger than they think." The museum ships, small in number but agile and clever, powered up. Their engines hummed, graviton drives thrumming to life as if sensing the challenge ahead. Each ship carried a skeleton crew of veterans, pilots, engineers, and strategists who had once flown these vessels decades ago. They had fought wars and survived near-impossible situations, and now, with young humans like Alara commanding, they were ready to prove themselves again. Captain Harding approached her. "You really believe these old ships can take on the Vorkesh?" Alara didn't flinch. "Not alone, but together, yes. The Vorkesh will be surprised by tactics it cannot predict." Harding nodded, though unease lingered in his eyes. "Do what you must, just don't let the colonies fall." The museum fleet moved toward the Vorkesh. From a distance, the alien flagship appeared massive, intimidating, and impossibly advanced. Its weapons glimmered with energy, and its surface shifted with adaptive shields that had never been tested against human ingenuity. To the Vorons, humans looked small, weak, and insignificant. Pitiful humans, the Vorkesh commander's voice echoed across space. Send them to dust. Alara studied the enemy movements. Fleet, listen carefully. They expect brute force. They do not expect creativity. Initiate the analog maneuver sequence. The Pioneer and its companions began to move unpredictably. Unlike modern ships which relied on computer-calculated trajectories, the museum ships used old manual piloting combined with graviton pulses, creating movements the Vorkesh could not track. Every turn, every shift seemed illogical, yet it worked. Impossible, the Vorkesh commander shouted. They are not following predicted patterns. Alara smiled slightly. That's the point. The museum ships moved closer not to attack directly, but to force the Vorkesh into mistakes. They created false gravitational fields, pulling enemy ships off course. They jammed communications, causing the alien fleet to misfire or collide with each other in small, harmless incidents. Every action was precise, yet subtle. The Vorons had no idea these tactics came from ships they considered antiques. Meanwhile, young pilots in the modern fleet watched in awe. "They're incredible," one whispered. "How do they do that with those old machines?" "Experience," an older officer said. "And human creativity, that's how." Alara's eyes focused on the Vorkesh. "Now," she said, "we strike, but without destruction." The Pioneer and Pathfinder activated gravity loops, a tactic designed decades ago for dangerous asteroid belts. They created loops in space that trapped sections of the Vorkesh's smaller ships, immobilizing them without damage. The aliens panicked, their flagship trying to compensate for the sudden disruptions. Energy beams were wasted as shields compensated for the unexpected gravitational anomalies. "Commander," a Voron officer cried, "they are manipulating space itself." "Yes," the commander hissed. "It's human, it is impossible." The museum fleet moved as one. Sentinel blocked the escape routes, while Pioneer led the flagship into a region where gravitational distortions were strongest. The Vorkesh fired its most advanced weapons, but they had difficulty locking onto targets moving unpredictably. Some beams bounced off gravitational fields, harmlessly dissipating into space. Alara coordinated the fleet with precision. "Keep them contained. Don't destroy them. We need them alive to send a message. Underestimate humans and you will fail." It was a dangerous dance. One misstep and the Vorkesh could destroy a museum ship. But Alara and her crew trusted their instincts. Every maneuver had been tested in simulations decades ago, refined over years and now executed perfectly. The Vorons grew desperate. They had expected a quick victory. They had expected humanity to fight with modern ships and technology and to fail. They had not expected strategy, adaptability, and patience. One of the Vorkesh's drones moved directly at Pioneer, attempting a full strike. Alara's hands flew over the controls. She activated the pulse shield, diverting energy from non-essential systems to the shield. The drone bounced harmlessly off the shield, spinning out of control and colliding with a gravitational anomaly the humans had created. It was a small victory, but it proved the concept. The museum ships could outsmart even the most advanced technology. "Fleet," she said, "tighten formation. Initiate the final trap." Using combined graviton fields and decoy projections, the museum ships led the Vorkesh into a gravity corridor between two asteroids. The Vorkesh, massive and confident, could not maneuver quickly enough. Its weapons fired wildly, but the corridor's gravitational forces pulled the energy beams off course. Panic spread among the alien crew. "Retreat," the Vorkesh commander bellowed. "We cannot control them." Alara didn't let them escape completely. She ordered Pioneer to create a blocking field, slowing the flagship's engines without damage. The other museum ships positioned themselves strategically, ensuring the Vorkesh could not advance toward the colonies. For hours, the humans held their ground, using intellect instead of firepower, creativity instead of sheer destruction. The museum ships, once mocked, had become symbols of human adaptability and cunning. Finally, the Vorkesh signaled surrender, not destruction but acknowledgement. Its commander realized that humans, even with ancient ships, could not be underestimated. The aliens withdrew, leaving the human colonies intact, their fleet unharmed. Captain Harding approached Alara, eyes wide. "You actually did it. They're retreating." Alara exhaled slowly. "Yes, but this is only the beginning. They will return. And when they do, we need to be ready. The museum ships, they're more than relics. They are proof that humans think differently, act unpredictably, and survive." Back on Colony Theta, humans cheered. They didn't know the details of the battle, but they understood one thing. Humans had outsmarted a superior enemy using old ships and new ideas. Alara walked across Pioneer's deck, looking at the stars. The museum ships glimmered under the starlight, silent and proud. They had been ridiculed for centuries, but now the galaxy had begun to see them differently. These ships were a testament to human ingenuity, adaptability, and courage. "Voss," Captain Harding said quietly, "you've changed the way the galaxy sees humanity." Alara smiled faintly. "Not me, the ships, and everyone who has ever flown them. Humans, we don't give up. We don't just fight, we think, we adapt, and that is how we survive." For the first time in centuries, the museum ships were more than exhibits. They were warriors, strategists, and symbols of the human spirit, and Alara knew that the final showdown was yet to come. The Vorans would return stronger and angrier. But when they did, humanity would be ready, not with sheer weapons, but with creativity, courage, and unpredictability. The galaxy had learned a lesson: never underestimate humans, even when they seemed weak, old, or out of date. And the humans themselves had discovered something profound. Their past was their greatest weapon, and their ingenuity was unstoppable. The stars were quiet now, but in the darkness, a new legend was forming. The museum ships, once laughed at, had struck fear and awe into the hearts of a mighty alien force. And as the humans prepared for the future, one thing was certain: the galaxy would never again see them as weak. The galaxy held its breath. After the Vorans' first retreat, humans had a moment to breathe, to regroup, and to plan. But everyone knew it was only a matter of time before the alien fleet returned. And this time, it would be different. Alara Voss stood on the deck of USS Pioneer, the museum ship that had become her second home. Her eyes scanned the holographic maps, tracing the predicted paths of the returning Voran forces. They had learned from their last encounter, and now they would come prepared, armed with stronger shields, smarter AI, and bigger weapons. But humans had learned too, and humanity's greatest weapon was creativity. "Captain Harding," she said, "we need to make them think. Not just fight them. Let them believe they have the advantage, then surprise them." Harding nodded slowly. "You're proposing another strike using what? The museum ships?" "Yes, and the old tactics with some new twists. This time we coordinate with the modern fleet, but the museum ships lead. The aliens won't expect it." The old ships were no longer ridiculed relics. They were now symbols of strategy, unpredictability, and courage. Crews who had trained for decades, who had long thought their time in space was over, now stood ready. Young humans like Alara brought fresh eyes and bold ideas, combining old knowledge with new innovation. The Voran fleet entered human space faster than anyone predicted. Its flagship, the Vorkesh, led the formation, confident and massive, surrounded by hundreds of smaller ships. They expected an easy victory, assuming humans would rely solely on modern fleets as before. They were wrong. Alara activated the analog and graviton systems on the Pioneer. She and her team had refined their maneuvers since the last battle, adding layers of strategy that the Vorons could not anticipate. "Fleet, follow my lead," she ordered. "We'll bait them toward the gravitational fields, then force them into the trap. Modern ships, protect the colonies, but don't interfere with the strategy. Let the museum ships handle this phase." The museum fleet moved forward, slow but deliberate, weaving unpredictably through space. The Vorkesh's sensors tracked them, but its AI could not predict human patterns. Every turn, every acceleration seemed illogical, yet effective. "Fools," the Voron commander growled. "They are toying with us." And they were, but it was no game. Humans had prepared. Every maneuver had a purpose. Alara coordinated with Pathfinder and Sentinel, the other museum ships. They used combined graviton fields to create illusionary fleets, false images that made it appear as though humans had hundreds more ships than they actually did. The Vorkesh fired at these illusions, wasting energy and attention. "Deploy the energy corridors," Alara shouted. These were narrow fields of altered gravity, designed to funnel enemy ships into precise positions. The Vorons followed blindly, their confidence blinding them to the subtle traps. The flagship reached the corridor first. It moved like a giant through a maze, unaware that its very momentum would work against it. Its smaller ships scattered to avoid collisions, but the corridor funneled them all into the museum fleet's carefully planned positions. "Engage the non-lethal restraints," Alara commanded. The museum ships emitted fields that slowed the Vorkesh's engines without damaging the hull. Its weapons system struggled to adjust. Energy beams bounced harmlessly off gravitational distortions, while smaller ships were gently but firmly contained. The Voron crew panicked. "We cannot move. They're ships, they are not just old relics. They outthink us." "Yes," Alara whispered. "That's humanity." Meanwhile, the modern human fleet watched in awe. The museum ships executed impossible maneuvers, showing agility, strategy, and creativity far beyond expectations. Where modern ships relied on raw power, the museum ships relied on intellect, timing, and unpredictability. The Vorkesh's commander realized that brute force alone could not win this battle. Every weapon fired was countered, every maneuver anticipated. And worst of all, the humans had done so without destruction, showing restraint and precision. Alara saw an opening. She ordered a coordinated movement. The museum ships converged to form a gravitational snare, a tight formation that prevented the flagship from retreating or advancing. The Vorkesh strained, energy surging from its shields, but the trap held. "Signal them," Alara said. "It's time to show them we could destroy them, but we won't. Not yet." A communication beam shot from Pioneer to the Vorkesh. On the view screen, Alara appeared, calm and commanding. "You underestimated us," she said. "You thought these ships were toys. You thought humans were weak, but we are clever, we are adaptable, and we do not fight like you expect. Leave our space or face defeat. But know this, we will not destroy you. We choose restraint." The Vorkesh's commander hesitated, scanning the humans' calm faces, their precise formations, and the overwhelming tactical advantage. They had been outmatched, outsmarted, and outmaneuvered, not with weapons, but with strategy and human spirit. Finally, the Vorkesh signaled retreat. Its fleet pulled back, moving carefully through the gravitational corridors humans had set. The colonies were safe. The museum ships floated silently in victory, their engines humming softly. Back on Colony Theta, people watched the alien fleet leave. They cheered, not fully understanding the tactics but knowing one thing. Humanity had won without destruction, without bloodshed, through cleverness alone. Captain Harding approached Alara on Pioneer. "You've changed the way the galaxy sees humans. I never imagined such a victory from relics." Alara smiled faintly. "Not me, sir, the ships, and the people who built them. Humans, we don't rely on size, speed, or firepower alone. We rely on creativity, courage, and persistence. That is how we survive. That is how we triumph." Veterans who had served on the museum ships decades ago nodded silently. They had always known these ships were special. Now, the galaxy knew too. Across the human colonies, celebrations erupted. Humans had survived a superior alien fleet not by matching their technology, but by using their minds and ingenuity. And the museum ships, once mocked, were now revered as symbols of human resilience. Alara looked up at the stars, thinking about the future. The Vorans would return, no doubt. They would bring more ships, stronger weapons, and greater confidence. But humans had learned something vital. Victory was not just in machines, but in how humans think, adapt, and persevere. She turned to Captain Harding. We've shown the galaxy something important. Never underestimate humans. Our ships may look old. Our methods may seem simple. But our minds are always moving forward, always thinking, always adapting. The captain nodded. Yes, humanity's strength is ingenuity, and you've proved it today. Alara smiled. Not just proved it, we've shown it. Let the galaxy remember. Humans are clever, resourceful, and unstoppable when we work together. In the days that followed, the museum ships were no longer confined to display halls. They became active participants in humanity's space fleet. Young engineers studied their mechanics. Pilots trained on their unusual controls. The lessons of the past combined with modern technology created a new wave of human innovation. The Vorans, meanwhile, reconsidered their assumptions. No longer would they mock humanity. They had learned a lesson that would echo through the galaxy. Do not underestimate humans, no matter how primitive or outdated they may appear. Alara stood on Pioneer's deck, watching the stars. She thought of the countless humans who had built, flown, and maintained these ships over centuries. They had dreamed of space, survived wars, and persevered through hardship. Today, those dreams, skills, and courage had protected humanity and inspired the galaxy. Voss, Captain Harding said softly, "What now?" "Now," she replied, "we keep learning, we keep improving. And we remember this, our strength is not just in weapons, not just in speed, not just in shields. It is in our minds, our courage, and our unity. That is what makes humans unstoppable." And with that, the Pioneer and its sister ships sailed quietly through the stars, no longer relics, no longer mocked, but symbols of humanity's ingenuity, resilience, and spirit. The galaxy had learned a valuable lesson. Humans may appear simple, old, or outdated, but when faced with impossible odds, they think, adapt, and triumph. And humanity, proud and clever as ever, would continue to explore, survive, and inspire across the cosmos.